Hey guys, TomBoss21 here. In today's video, I'm going to show you the most ludicrous hero call I've ever seen in my life. This is an absolutely ridiculous hand played between Linus Loeliger and Ryan Depaulo during the 2025 Cash Game World Championship. Let's dive right in. This is a 5-handed table. These guys are playing 10 KNL. So each one of these units is equivalent to $1 US. Now, Linus Loeliger opens in a hijack. And we've got Ryan Depaulo streaming. He defends in a cutoff. 3-2 suited, calls it a tilt call. Rig deck also calls. And we're 4 ways to a flop. Linus c-bets. And Ryan's got a decision here with bottom flush draw, and he raises. The other two players get out of the way. Linus calls, and now we get a very interesting turn card. Trip kings on board. So his flush draw is not looking so pretty anymore because any pair beats him. Now Linus correctly recognizes the situation. He realizes that
weird spot.
The equities have shifted.
I'm totally out in the woods here. Like I have no idea what is going on, you know?
And Ryan's lost. He doesn't know what to do.
I'm gonna fold.
He knows his hand is weak, but he calls anyway. And now we get quads on board. So this is a game of who has the higher kicker.
I gotta go for it. I gotta rep the ace high flush draw, I guess. I gotta rep the ace high flush draw.
Linus checks.
But what did I raise flop with, right? It doesn't make sense. So what am I saying I raised the flop with? An ace high? Yeah, I guess I would.
Ryan shoves. He's got the nut low, so.
I obviously have the ace. No, god damn it. What? Yo, what is this guy, the best in the world?
And Linus calls with 8 high. So, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous because, okay, just in case you were paying attention, his pair of 8s doesn't play, right? Like, Linus is beaten by any 9, any 10, any jack, any queen, any ace beats him here. So to make this hero call, you have to put your opponent on like exactly like the type of hand that Ryan has. Just an absolutely insane call. Let's take a look at the GTO analysis. The first step to solving this is to find some reasonable pre-flop ranges as a baseline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up these ante ranges because they're actually playing with ante, and I'll select 7 max. And chip EV with a 2.25x open. So this is pretty close to what Linus actually had. I'll use general because these have cold calls. Now, you'll see in a moment that this is not a very precise analysis. It's just kind of like a rough baseline. The antes in game are actually a fair bit bigger than what we have here, but it doesn't matter for our purpose. So Linus opens hijack and Ryan defends here. This is the calling range. You can see it's a pretty wide defend, but Ryan's wider than he should be. So he's defending hand like 3 deuce here, which is not a call. This hand, even with the bigger ante, this would not be a call. He knows this. He calls it a tilt call. He's doing it anyway because, well, he's the action player. Button folds. Both of the blinds defend. Now, keep in mind that these are all high-stakes players and one Ryan Depaulo, so they're trying to get into pots with him. They're playing pretty wide, probably much wider than this, to be honest. Regardless, I'm only going to go 3 ways to a flop because that's the limitation of our software right now. And I'm going to go ahead and customize this so it is closer to the actual betting tree in game. All right, here's my betting tree. I've got everything set up. Now I'm going to start with a kind of like pseudo GTO setup. We're going to solve that just to set expectations. And then I'm going to adjust it based on Ryan's play and show you a more exploitative analysis that's closer to what's happening in game. So just to go through this, flop is king, king, 4. Big blind checks. Hijack bets small. Action on cutoff, and you can see there's no raising here. Cutoff should just be, calling or folding at this point, but Ryan decides to raise it up with 3 deuce, which is, it's not even here, but, 6 5s and raising 7 6. Anyway, he raises. Big blind gets out of the way. So does small blind. Action on hijack, and here 8 is a pure defend. Turn is a king, and you can see that as soon as the turn comes a king, like this is a fantastic card for Linus's range, and he knows that, right? Because the thing is, he's defending with like all of these pocket pairs, which have all of a sudden just been upgraded to a full house, completely negating like any chance of losing to Ryan's flush draws. So yeah, just a fantastic turn card for hijack, and that's why they lead out with basically their entire range. Linus, of course, sees that. He donk bets, and here Ryan's in a pretty tough spot. Now, here he should just be folding his flush draws. They're just not good here, right? Like maybe, okay, yeah, if you have like ace, queen, ace, jack, these hands are, you're actually drawing to like hit the ace or the queen. You don't really care about hitting the spade, right? At this point, the only thing that matters is like drawing to boats. But anyway, Ryan, he thinks here for a second. He says, well, I should fold. But again, he just makes the tilt call, so he calls anyway. And then on the river, we get the final king, which is just so fun. So we've got king, king, four, king, king. And at this point, remember, it's just the highest kicker that wins. It's actually not a fantastic card for Linus's range because his great advantage was that all of these hands were boats. But now all of these hands are just kickers. Like you went from like kings full of eights to like king, 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 and then 8 kicker. So his full house has now been downgraded, and he gets beat by any 9, any 10, any jack, any queen, any ace. So he checks here, which just seems correct. Then here Ryan's supposed to polarize, betting like ace high for value, and then the 5 kicker as a bluff, or 5 or 4 or lower. So it seems like here, if you get here with 3 deuce, then it kind of makes sense to shove with 3 deuce, right? But maybe you shouldn't be getting with that hand in the first place. Then here, facing the shove, Linus's 8s should just fold. So it seems like at first glance that Linus has made like an exploitative call. But now I'm going to do a more, let's say, closer to reality solve, just to show you like how this can change if we change some of the underlying assumptions. So this is a very special table. This is the VIP table at the Cash Game World Championship. So what it is again, it's 10K NL, so they're playing with $10,000 buy-ins. There's no rake. It's 0.33 big blind ante per player, which is a pretty big ante. And importantly, it's a 7 deuce game, which means that if you win the hand with 7 deuce, every player at the table has to pay you 5 big blinds. Now, moreover, Ryan, he's actually the designated action player. So I'm not using that as an insult. I think Coin Poker is actually like paying him to be there and to spice up the games. And for that reason, it creates these kind of like interesting exploitative dynamics. Nevertheless, just the 7-2 game by itself changes things considerably. So let's dive back into GTO Wizard with the 7-2 game in mind. Knowing that this is a 7 deuce game, we should alter the player's ranges so that everyone has 7 deuce in range. I'm also going to go ahead and extend Ryan's range down here so he has all of these low pocket pairs and suited connectors, including 3 deuce. Next, because Ryan's supposed to be the action player, we can assign him a profile that makes him a little more splashy. So I can pick one of these preset ones, but I think I'll make my own. I'm going to go ahead and add a new profile. We'll call it the Ryan Depaulo. We'll make it red for angry. So I think he's going to be a little bit splashy. So we'll have, let's say, bet and raise it 3, call it 5. So what this does is it makes a player that's kind of loose and splashy. So they're going to bet and raise more, and they're going to call more. Okay. And we'll go ahead and make a new solution. All right, here's our new solution. So we check, action over the hijack, and you can see they're not really supposed to lead out very much here. And this is because when they check, they expect the splashy player to do a lot of betting. But Linus leads out, and here we can see that cutoff is never supposed to be raising here, really. But we notice that they're folding hands like 7-2 here. I don't think that happens in the 7 deuce game, so I'm going to go ahead and node lock this. What we're going to do is just make 7 deuce raise. Okay. Now, we'll also make Ryan's exact hand raise, as he did in game. And I'm going to make sure that previous nodes are unlocked so that players can anticipate this. And I'm also going to make sure that this switch is turned off. And what this does is it allows the rest of the range to adjust. So all I've told the solver is that these hands here must do as they're told. The rest of the range is free to adapt. And because I've made him bluff raise a bunch of hands, presumably he's going to have to start value raising a bunch of hands, and the solver will kind of create like a new balanced range. So let's apply this node lock and see what happens. Here we are. Now let's go ahead and see if these have changed at all. And you can see now all of a sudden, hijack starts leading out plenty. Okay. Ryan raises. Big blind gets out of the way, and hijack defends. You can see they're calling pretty wide here. We call, and we take king of diamonds flop. Check. Now, here, I'm going to make sure that they actually have a small bet size. just like they did in game, and then we'll give them one like decent size bet. Okay, and you can see that eights exactly is still wanting to lead out a little bit. So Linus bets, and you can see that Ryan's range here is kind of questionable. It's very, very tight, much tighter than it probably would be in a real game. Nevertheless, he calls, and you can see that 3 deuces is kind of, it's doing all 3. So this is a hand that's very close between all 3 of its options. And then you get the last king on the river, check, and in this case, he does go all in. And here you can see that eights is pretty close, right? Eights is like kind of right on the line. Okay, so let's ask ourselves, what's going on with this? Why would you call with what is essentially 8 high here? Because this feels crazy. What's happening is that Ryan's range is very, very polarized, right? So he either has an ace or he has like 7 deuce. Now, part of the reason that eights is even close here is the fact that 7 deuce is giving up a lot. So we take a look here. These hands are just checking back and like just giving up a ton. But in reality, with a 7 deuce game on, you would expect these hands to bluff, right? So let's go ahead and node lock that. I'm going to go all in with both of these hands. Shove. And now eights is an easy call because it beats 7 deuce, right? Any hand that beats 7 deuce is going to be a pretty good call here. This is just like the nature of how this works, right? Because if you expect that your opponent is bluffing with a lot of 7-2 and the board is king, 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 4, well, any hand that has, a higher card than a 7 is going to be a reasonable bluff catcher. And in this case, you could see that a hand like 8-8 actually has 50% equity, which is a perfectly reasonable call. So that's why Linus Love called down with 8 high in this spot. Hands like that are why I love the Cash Game World Championship. You get to see some of the most talented people in the world showing you how poker ought to be played. With that said, I'd like to dive into the 7 deuce game strategy a little bit because this is becoming a more and more popular poker variant, but there's not a lot of theoretical coverage on how it works. Now, for starters, there's no solver that can solve the 7 deuce game right now. Not because it's particularly hard to do this, but there's just not enough demand for it right now. But that said, we can still cover it on a theoretical basis. So the way it works is that if you win with 7 deuce, everyone at the table has to pay you 5 big blinds. In this case, they're playing 5-handed, it's 10 KNL, so that works out to a $2,000 bonus to any player that wins the hand with 7 deuce. Now in theory, what this does is it means that folding is slightly minus EV, because if you fold, there's a chance your opponent turns over 7 deuce, and now you need to pay them an additional 5 big blinds. And so because folding is slightly minus EV, you should call down slightly wider. You should be more willing to defend and less willing to fold. Moreover, the aggressor should size up and bluff less often overall. And the reason is that, well, they're anticipating that they're going to get called down wider because the 7 deuce game is on. And in order to make the defender indifferent between a minus EV fold and a minus EV call, they should size up and bluff less often overall as a function of their overall value to bluff ratio. Additionally, because they're so inclined to bluff with 7 deuce, other hands that feel like natural bluffs should give up more often in order to, quote unquote, make room for the 7 deuce bluffs. So that's the idea. The aggressor is being, sizing up, being more value heavy. The defender is calling slightly wider, and neither player really wants to give up with 7 deuce. I really enjoyed making this one. I hope to see a lot more cool hands coming out of the Cash Game World Championship. And let me know in the comments if you guys want to see some 7 deuce off theory in the future. Maybe we'll even add it to GTO Wizard, who knows. All right, that's all for now. Take care.